Okay, hello. Super excited to show you what I've been working on this week. I spent way too much work on it, so I have to mix up my days a little bit so I can get my hours in so that I actually earn some money, because I've been working on the Overmind devtools, and I just want to show you this stuff. Okay, so I have the website, Overmind website, which is built with Overmind, which is a little bit overkill, but we need something to get going. So when I open the DevTools now, you can see that it has changed quite a bit. I can go over to the state here first. So what we see here is I've done some general design changes, which makes things just look a lot better, in my opinion. But I've also added the possibility to change the state. So for example here, I can click query. And then if I type something wrong, it will yell at me because it needs to be JSON. So I can say test and click OK. And if I now jump to the website, we can see that it says test here in the query here. What's kind of nice about this is that you might wonder, why didn't I click the value? Why did I click the property? Well, the thing is, sometimes you have like an object here. And when you now click versions, you can actually change the whole thing. And it's, of course, the same with arrays. So you can change the array. So it's just a better approach to click the properties instead of the values. Okay, so that's kind of cool. That's a new feature. And then we have actions. So I've done a lot of work here. I've added the possibility to actually to execute actions directly from the dev tool, which is pretty awesome, because that means we are finally at the point where you can actually develop your application without the UI. So whenever you write new actions in Overmind, you will get them in the dev tool and you can trigger them with the payload and you can see how they execute. So you don't have to go through this process, which I think is a really bad process, where you kind of like, okay, you're implementing some new feature, you create an action, maybe you create an effect, you grab some data, then you implement the component, you need some UI, so you just put something together to see that you can click so that you can get the data, but then you have to do some CSS, and then you spend more time on CSS than anything else, which is really frustrating. So with this feature, you are allowed to work on your actual application, your state and your side effects, completely separated from the UI, which I think is pretty awesome. But I've also worked on the UI here, and I completely refactored how these actions are displayed. So for example, on initialize here, it's just a simple action. And you see all the effects and the state that has changed. And then you can see the payload that was passed into this action, which is the Overmind instance. That is why it's purple-like here. And then it indicates that it did a flush. So as we can see down here, when we requested the versions, that is asynchronous. So the app will render in the meantime, and then we set the versions, and that will trigger a flush. And we can see that the top bar and the view selector were affected by that. Then we have open guides, which uses the functional API, meaning that you have multiple steps here, where we first ensure that we have the Vue and TypeScript set up, and then we load the guides here, which also did a flush. And we can check out the payload here, how it looks, it's all good. And then we can fire this test action. And this shows you a more complex flow using the functional API of Overmind. So what we see here is that we pass in the payload test, and that runs a when operator. And the when operator can go down a true path or a false path. And in this case, it went down true, where it ran a map, which mapped to a new value, true path, which is passed into this map. And then it did a fork, which allows you to dynamically go down different paths, in this case foo, which then did a couple of maps. This is just silly code. And then we have a filter, and then we run parallel, which shows you what happens on the first parallel and on the second parallel. And then we have catch error down here, which doesn't actually run. It kind of like skips it because there were no errors. So that is faded out a little bit. And then we can go into the code here and we can say, oops, I forgot to prepare this. Where did I have that? Down here. Here's my silly code. And I can change this filter to false. And we can trigger it again. And now we see that it actually indicates that it has an operator that kind of like breaks the flow. It kind of like exits the flow. So that's also indicated. What you might have noticed here as well is that it didn't actually refresh anything. And the website is hot reloaded. And that means that the state is hot reloaded and the actions list is hot reloaded. Yeah, so everything's like hot reloaded, which is really cool. Then we have the components tab, which now is also refactored a little bit. We can see, oh, there seems to be some bug there. I've just refreshed so that it indicates the dependencies of the components. So as we can see here, we have an app, we have the top bar, which looks at the versions and the page, and then we have the view selector. Yeah, seems to be some bug here. It should actually look at some state here. Yeah, there it pops up. Anyways, doesn't matter, I'll fix that. And what this does now is that it indicates how many times it has updated. And then it also gives a different color, indicating that you might have a component that depends on too much state. So here we can see that the search component actually looks at a bunch of state. In this case, it doesn't really matter too much because we won't actually mutate the results, meaning that the component won't render again, so we don't really care about it here. But for example, and even the guides, like it's a pretty static page. But when you have like lists where you might mutate each individual item in the list and stuff, this is really helpful so that you don't go wrong there. Okay, and then we have a new tab called History. And History shows you chronologically everything it did with the different mutations and effects. So here we can see that it started doing this mutation, then it did some effects, and then it did some other mutations. And this is just really nice. And it even shows you the flushes it did. So that you know when it tried to tell the components to update related to when the, like you can run multiple actions at the same time because they do asynchronous stuff. But anyways, this should also actually indicate what action actually did this, and maybe make the action clickable so you can jump into the action. And there's so many things we can do here. But I just wanted to show you that. And the flushes are also updated so that you can see which action actually caused the flush to occur and what did the flush include. Yeah, and the console here is the same. But yeah, I'm mostly excited about the actions part. And yeah, as I said, we're getting to a place where I think Overmind can really put itself apart from the other solutions. And we are also about to release Overmind officially, like it's still in kind of like a testing phase. Because we've been figuring out some bugs, people have been building applications. Also, the production mode of Overmind runs a little bit differently than the development mode, so it's been important to test that. Okay, so that's the dev tool. Other stuff I've been doing this week, I've been battling, god damn it, scrolling on iPhone, like with inputs. It's insane. I haven't worked on mobile web apps for a while, but I'm working on it now, and it's I totally snapped. I think it was yesterday. Completely snapped because you can't make like a chat thing at the bottom, like you have an input, and make that work nicely with scrolling. So if you make that input like fixed at the bottom, it will actually stay fixed when you scroll. But but you have to scroll on body. You can't do like overflow hidden and scroll on inner containers. Like technically you can, but the experience sucks. First of all, you don't get the smooth scrolling, but then you can add a special CSS to get the smooth scrolling. But the problem then is when you scroll to the top and then you continue scrolling, then you scroll the whole freaking browser window. And if you do that, and you quickly try to scroll down again, then that won't work. It kind of like the browser window has to settle first, and then you can scroll the inner container again. It's such a bad experience. It's just insane. Like, why are they doing this? Why did they make the virtual keyboard like overlaying the web page? Why isn't it part like if the mobile phone screen is like this, and then you put up the keyboard, and then it makes a browser window smaller, like, because that would trigger like the resize event, and you would have you would know how big the keyboard is, and it's just I wonder why they do this. Do they do this because they don't want the web to be a good platform for apps? Because it would compete with the app platforms like at Apple and Google? Oh, it's so bad. And surprisingly, it works better on Android, actually, using the Chrome browser. They seem to be more dedicated to make the web a good experience. But anyways, I just had to get that out. So I'll be I've been researching a little bit on Firebase notifications, because this app I'm working on is going to notify using web notifications. I've done this before, which was kind of tricky, but I see that the documentation is a lot better now. And so I'm kind of looking forward to implementing that. It does require a service worker, which is a little bit scary, but I'm going to bypass the caching stuff, because that's the scary part about service workers. When you don't implement caching correctly, you might completely mess up the production. So users never get the new version of your app, which is bad. And then I wanted to show you, like, Code Sandbox just released this VS Code thing. So now you actually have a Visual Studio Code experience. Like, this is not like Monaco. This is like the complete experience. Like, you can, I don't know where it is. Is it here? Or you can do like extensions and stuff. I haven't looked at it. Is it here? Preferences, integrations. Where is that? Maybe they haven't shipped that yet, but you're supposed to be able to do, is it here? No. You're supposed to be able to add extensions and stuff, like actual Visual Studio Code extensions directly here in the browser. It's pretty insane. So the experience now is super great. The TypeScript support is excellent. So much looking forward to get started with Code Sandbox now in April, so that we can get all the UI stuff over on Overmind. So what's kind of cool there is that I can use this new action approach to test all, like I can implement all the Overmind logic, like all the existing logic into Overmind, and just test it with a dev tool. And then we can ship that. And then we can gradually start to convert the components so they look at the Overmind state instead of Cerebral and Mobix state tree. Okay, last but not least, since I've been battling the scrolling, and it was really difficult to get this dev tool up and running. Where is it? With this insane structure here. So in between, to kind of like blow off some steam, I played The Division 2, which is awesome. Yeah, you should really, like, it's been Anthem was cool, but there's so much negative talk about it, which is affecting me, so I'm not playing it. Then I tried Metro Exodus, which is also really cool, but I don't know, I was really motivated, but now being a little bit unmotivated, the Division 2 is surprisingly awesome. It's nice when you're frustrated to just shoot some digital entities. Okay, thanks for listening, and yeah, as I said, I lost a bit of money this week working on this dev tool, so hopefully you can buy me some coffee. And I'm really looking forward to the release. I hope to get it out next week. Okay, awesome. Have a great weekend.